What's going on? Welcome to our second lecture from Unit 4. Unit 4 is all about learning. Hopefully you watched the last video about classical conditioning. We're now going to talk about the second main type of associative learning, which is called operant conditioning. Operant conditioning, okay? So you got a lot to go through. So let's go ahead and get started. So I mentioned in class a couple days ago that there are two types of associative learning. Classical you can't control, and an operant you can control. You choose to operate differently. And the reason why is because there's something you're trying to get. Okay? There's like an object at stake here. Maybe it's a prize or money or college acceptance. So operant conditioning is sometimes called instrumental learning. And an instrument is an object, something that you're trying to get out of this behavior. Okay? Just write that phrase down for Roman numeral 1 about operant conditioning. The rest of this stuff you should already have in your notes from our class on Friday when we introduced the unit. Roman numeral 2, Thorndike. It's a person's name. He came up with what's called the law of effect. His name was Edward Thorndike, and it's a very simple law. He said that if you do something and are given a reward immediately afterwards, you will do that thing more often. Okay? So if you're a cat and you do some behavior and you get a treat as a result, that cat's going to keep doing that behavior. Okay? If my dog whines by the dinner table and we give him food, guess what he's going to keep doing? Whining at the dinner table. When you reinforce or reward, synonym, somebody's behavior, it makes the behavior more likely to occur. Guess what the other part of the law of effect is? If you punish somebody after they do something, they're probably not going to do that thing as much. If my dog whines near the dinner table and I put an electrical shock collar on him and zap him, that's punishment. He's going to whine less at the dinner table, okay? That's the big idea of the law of effect. We're going to do a little demonstration in class to see how we can reward and punish people to shape their behavior. That's the big idea of this unit. So Edward Thorndike, and the reason why I have cats here is he developed these devices where the cats would go in the box and the cats would have to try and solve their way out. The reward was getting out of the box. The punishment was being stuck in the box. So Thorndike experimented with the cats. Skinner experimented with pigeons and with mice. He developed a little box for experiments. He was a behaviorist, right? B.F. Skinner is a famous behaviorist. He called his box an operant chamber. It was a place where he could measure how the organism, the pigeon or the mouse, how it operated, how it acted, how it behaved. Some folks just call it a Skinner box. This was like in the 50s. It was not very complicated, okay? So the box would have an electrical floor to zap the organism with. There'd be a space for food to come out to reward the organism. And sometimes there'd be like a flashing light or a sound or a little lever or button for the mouse. So something for the mouse to do, a possible reward, a possible punishment, okay? And then hooked up to this device would be paper and pen, like so. So what we have here, the pen, this was like the 50s, no computers at this point. It was like very old school. Every time the mouse pushed the lever, the pen would go up a little bit, and then it would keep drawing. And when the mouse pushed the lever again, the lever would move every time it pushed the button. The pen would move and make a little notch here to demonstrate, whoa, the mouse is doing the thing a lot, okay? So let's say this is a mouse where when it pushes the lever, it gets food. So here it pushes the lever. This represents time going by, where the mouse probably goes, sniffs the food, eats the food, and is like, oh yeah, I want more of that. And he goes back, pushes the lever, and he's like, oh, this is working. And he pushes it 10 times. And this is probably him like taking a little break, maybe to eat some of the food before he pushes the lever some more, okay? So a steep slope on a graph, right? A steep slope, it means the organism is doing the thing a lot, okay? Now remember, for operant conditioning to work, they got to do the thing, then get the reward. Push the lever, then get the food, okay? If your parents told you that they'd give you $100, no, let's say $1,000 for getting an A in AP Psychology, I bet you'd work really hard to get an A in AP Psychology, right? You'd work really hard to get your A, then they would give you the $1,000. That's a good system for shaping your behavior. Now, what if your parents said, we're gonna give you $1,000 for being an AP Psychology, and they gave you that $1,000 in August and said, here's the money, don't forget to get that A, is that going to work as well for shaping your behavior? Are you going to work as hard if you already have the money? No, the reward should come after the behavior. Do the thing, then get the reward. That's the best way to shape somebody's behavior. And this is a vocabulary word, shaping. Technically, Skinner called it, and you write this phrase down, the method of successive, back to back to back in a succession, successive approximations. This just means getting closer, all right? If you're trying to get an organism to do something really complicated, you got to sort of break it down into baby steps, right? If you've ever been to like the circus or seen, on TV, a dog jumping through a flaming hula hoop, that's not something a dog does on its own. First, they get the dog to jump. Then they get the dog to jump through the hula hoop when it's an inch off the ground. Then they lift it up to 6 inches, then a foot, then 3 feet off the ground. Then they light part of it on fire. Then they light more of it on fire. And then pretty slowly, with rewards all along the way, they can get closer to the goal of getting the dog to jump through the flaming hula hoop. B.F. Skinner worked with pigeons. So if you want the pigeon to tap the button, it might not tap it on its own. Sometimes you maybe have to give it a reward when it looks towards the button. Give it a reward when it walks towards the button. Give it a reward when it moves its head towards the button. And then give it a reward when it actually pushes the button. You're shaping it. You're getting it closer and closer and closer. Now, sometimes in life, you do something and then something good happens. You do a random behavior and then there's a reward. Maybe one day you ate Cheerios for breakfast and then you won the state championship. Behavior, reward. Sometimes our brain thinks that our wearing Cheerios or eating Cheerios or wearing special shoes or listening to a certain song before a game or performance, sometimes our brain thinks that that action led to the good outcome, the reward, the great show, the praise, the trophy, the championship. This is how we develop superstitions. It's a form of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner actually had pigeons become superstitious. He would give them food every 10 seconds. So there's a video clip, I'll maybe try and send it to y'all, of a pigeon that just happens to be flapping its wings and food comes out of the dispenser. The pigeon brain thinks, oh, my action caused the reward. So guess what it starts doing? It flaps its wings for 10 seconds. Guess what comes out after 10 seconds? Food. And the pigeon thinks to itself, I've done it. I've figured out the system. And then just sits there flapping its wings for 10 seconds, food comes out. Yo, if it was doing nothing, food would still come out, right? It is making an illusory correlation between the action and the reward. This is how superstitions develop, okay? Other things that B.F. Skinner researched, token economy. A token is something that by itself has no value. If you go get a token at, Dave & Buster's or something like that, it's not good. You can't buy stuff with that anywhere else, but you can use tokens to get things you might want, to get food or toys or games. Token money is a token. The dollars that we carry in our wallets, that's not really worth anything, right? It's a secondary reinforcer. We use this to get things that we actually want. Okay, secondary doesn't have real value. Primary reinforcer has a real value. Y'all have grown up on token economies. I bet your elementary school teachers use token economies to try and shape your behavior, right? Maybe they gave y'all points or class dojo points, or you got popsicle sticks or something where if you earn enough tickets, if you earn enough Juno bucks, you got to go to the treasure chest, right, and get something out of it. I love this graphic. An iPad break. Look at this computer. Oh, hilarious. But teachers have been bribing y'all for years. What they're doing is using a token economy. They give you secondary reinforcers that you can trade in for a primary reinforcer because they're trying to shape your behavior. Quick check for understanding. See if you can answer these 5 questions. We'll go over them in class. Pause it. Go over it. Good luck. Cool. So let's talk about some vocabulary here. We've talked about reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement, just a synonym for that, is a reward. You don't need to write this down necessarily. When you reward something, it makes the behavior more likely to happen again. When you punish someone, it makes them less likely. Punishment is always bad. Reinforcement is always good. Now this gets tricky because there are two other words that we use in psychology, positive and negative. Y'all often associate positive with being something good. That's not what it means in psychology for this unit. Positive means like a plus sign, positive to be adding something, whereas negative is when something is removed or subtracted, a negative sign, a minus sign, okay? So you can have positive reinforcement. You can also have negative reinforcement. Is negative reinforcement a good thing or a bad thing? Well, reinforcement is always a what? Reward. So negative reinforcement is a good thing. We want them to keep doing the behavior, so we're going to reward them. How can we reward somebody by taking something away? Well, if y'all are really good, I won't give y'all homework. I won't give y'all a free response. I won't give you a test. I'll remove that annoying person from your class. You know who you are. So reinforcement is always good. It can be positive or negative. So negative reinforcement is good. Wait, what about positive punishment? Is that good or bad? Positive punishment. Punishment is always bad. What could I add to you that would be a punishment? Well, I could add homework. I could add a free response. I could add an annoying person to your class. I could add an electrical shock to your life. That's a positive punishment, okay? We're gonna do a lot of practice with this in class, okay? On Wednesday, Thursday. But some examples. The rat presses a lever and gets a shock. So is this behavior being rewarded or punished? All right, well, getting a shock, that's a punishment. And he gets a shock. So is this positive punishment or negative punishment? Getting a shock, this would be example number one of positive punishment. We want him to stop pushing the lever and he is getting something added to a situation. Number two, the action Joe puts on deodorant. Are we going to punish Joe or reward Joe for this? Joe is going to get rewarded for putting on deodorant. How is he being rewarded? Well, body odor is avoided. Body odor is removed from him. This would be an example of negative reinforcement. Good job, Joe. We're going to reward you. Keep putting on deodorant. What's your reward? No more body odor. Number three, Marco studies a lot. We're going to reward Marco. How do we reward him? Well, he gets a good grade. That's an example of the most common form of reward or reinforcement, positive reinforcement. You also got to look at a scenario like this and determine if it's positive or negative, and if it's punishment or reinforcement. We're gonna do some examples in class, okay? That we'll talk about to make sure you get it. Here's a check for understanding for you. See if you can do this, okay? Think about how you could punish or reward a mouse for pushing a lever in these four different ways. Would it be positive or negative, and would it be punishment or reinforcement? Try to do this on your own. We'll talk about it in class. The last section of today's class, it's complicated. We're going to talk about how often do you give the person, the organism, the reward or the punishment. Okay, so learning works best if they do the thing and there's an immediate outcome. They immediately get the reward or punishment. That's the best case scenario, right? It's no good if your dog poops in the house at noon, and if at 5 when you get home you yell at your dog. That's not going to be a good consequence. The dog doesn't know why you're yelling at him. Okay, it's best if the second the dog starts to go to the bathroom in the house, that's when you start yelling. The dog will be able to make the association, the connection in their brain. Learning works best if the consequence, the reward or punishment is immediate. That's why I try to grade things as quickly as possible for y'all. Because I know if you work really hard, I want y'all to know immediately how you did. If you work really hard and find out 3 weeks later that you got an A on the test, that's nice, but your brain's not going to make the connection that the studying is what led to the good grade. You need immediate feedback, okay? Now, sometimes we give people a reward or a punishment for every single time they do the thing. An example of this would be like if a parent says, for every goal the kid scores in the soccer game, they get $10. That's continuous reinforcement. The key word here is every time. Every goal gets you $10. That's continuous reinforcement. I don't have that kind of money, right? We don't want to do that. Always give out a reward. So sometimes what we might do, put a star by this point, is called intermittent reinforcement or partial reinforcement. Maybe it's like every 3 goals, they get $10. or every 7 goals, they get $10. Or maybe on Fridays, they get $10 if they score a goal, right? Or maybe the rewards are kind of random. The kid never knows when the goal is going to come. We're going to talk about the 4 types of partial reinforcement. So we just talked about the 4 types of negative, positive rewards and punishments. We're now going to talk about the 4 types of schedules, the 4 ways that you can give out rewards. You can give them out time-based. So this means like, 1 reward an hour, or you only get rewards on Fridays, or 30 minutes has to go by before the punishment will happen again. So a time-based reward outcome, or what's called a ratio-based outcome, which means how many times did you do the thing? How many times did you score the goal? How many times did you get an A? Sometimes we let people know ahead of time what the reward is going to be and how often it's going to come. That's called a fixed schedule. We can also have a variable schedule, which means you don't actually know when that reward is coming. You don't know if it's your first goal or 5th goal or 7th or 10th. You don't know if it's Tuesdays or Fridays. It's always changing, okay? So we can combine these words into fixed or variable interval and fixed or variable ratio. All right, so I'm going to go through these real quick for y'all, and then we'll do some practice in class. So fixed ratio is when you get the thing after a certain number of actions, okay? If you want someone to learn quickly, this is the method you use. So for example, let's say you work at Chick-fil-A and they say for every 10 Chick-fil-A calendars you sell, we'll give you $100. Fixed ratio, you know exactly what you have to do, and it's based on you doing the action. There's nothing time related to this. You get a free pizza for every 5 books you read. It is set, you gotta do it 5 times, and it's about the action, all right? So let's say that a parent wants to reward their kid for, winning a baseball game. Well, this isn't, you get to go get ice cream after every win. That wouldn't be fixed ratio. That would be, going back to the last slide, that would be continuous. I'm asking you, what's the intermittent schedule you could use? So you could say something like, oh, we'll get ice cream every 3 wins, every 10 wins, every 50 wins if it was my kid, right? That's a fixed ratio consequence. Now you could, and I'll go over these charts in class because they're kind of hard to see. You could also do a variable ratio where it's based on them doing the thing, but you don't know what the magic number is. So like, there's a bonus for you for selling calendars, but you don't know what the magic number is. Or this is an example they like to put. Actually, go ahead and write down the phrase slot machine. You can't win without playing, but you don't know when the jackpot's going to happen. Variable ratio, meaning variable, it's not clear when the reward's going to come, but ratio, it's based on your actions and behaviors, okay? This is a really good way to reward people when you want them to keep doing the thing for a very long time, because they never know if the next try, if the next play, if the next win, if the next sale, it might lead to a big reward. So they just kind of keep doing the thing just in case. The first 2 were fixed ratio and variable ratio. They have to do with you doing the action. The other 2 ways that you can reward or punish people are time-based, okay? Time-based. You get the reward after a certain amount of time, and again, minutes, hours, days. So the mail is an example of something. If you have a good mailman, an example of something that is a fixed interval. It doesn't matter how many times you check the mail in the morning. It's not like the 10th time you open the mailbox, the mail is there. No, it's time-based. You have to check the mailbox after 3 p.m. When you're baking something, right? An hour has to go by before it's cooked. It doesn't matter how many times you look in the oven. That's not going to speed up the process. You have to let the time go by before the reward will happen, all right? So an example here would be like the parent says, on Fridays, if you win, we'll go get ice cream, all right? Here's what's funny. Kids not going to try very hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But Fridays, they're going to work really hard. We use this at Linear High School. Y'all's grades are fixed interval. You know that makeup work and extra credit has to be in by the end of the semester. So you change your behavior as this set time. You know the deadline. And as we get closer to the deadline, that's when your behavior changes. It's a set time and you know what the consequences will be. So you change your behavior as we get closer and closer to that time. if you're waiting for a package in the mail or a check in the mail, I bet you look outside your window more as you get closer to 3 p.m. because you know that the time is what matters. The last one obviously is variable interval. And this is like a weird one, but basically time has to go by before you can get the reward. And you don't exactly know when the reward is going to come. So like in this case, you do the behavior a lot because you never know like when the thing might happen. So the example they give in the textbook is checking your phone for a new text message. Checking the phone isn't speeding up the process, right? A certain amount of time has to go by. Checking the phone isn't actually helping. Time has to go by, but you don't know. It's a mystery as to when the reward is going to occur. So this would be like, a parent, maybe this week it's a Monday, but the next week it's going to be a Thursday, and the following week it's a Friday, then another Friday. But maybe they don't get ice cream for another 2 weeks, and it's got to be on the Wednesday, right? It's like the parent keeps moving it around, and the kid just can't predict it. Okay, so variable interval leads to them just trying to do the thing a lot because they just never know when it's going to come. So we'll look at this chart in class, and it kind of shows how a mouse put into 4 different Skinner boxes or operant chambers on 4 of these different schedules, how that will impact the mouse responses. But basically, ratio schedules lead to steeper slopes, faster, more responses, whereas the interval schedules lead to lower, slower responses. And this weird red graph with the loops, this is the fixed interval. So this is the one that, like, as the deadline gets close, actions change a lot. This is how y'all do your schoolwork, right? As the report cards are about to come out, that's when you turn things in. Then you chill for a few weeks. And then right before progress reports, you work really hard. You chill for a few weeks. Right before midterms, you work really hard. You chill for a few weeks. Right before finals, you work really hard. That's that red line about fixed interval actions. Check for understanding we'll do in class. Think about if you're trying to train a dog on different schedules of reinforcement. Okay. We'll do this in class. We'll look over it together. Make sure that you understand the concepts. We'll have a quiz over this stuff, and it's a lot. We kind of jumbled in, two lectures into one here. So I know it was a lot to deal with, but I hope you got everything down. I hope it made sense. Rewind, rewatch, Google, ask questions in class if you have questions. And we'll go over this. We'll do a lot of practice this unit. Thanks so much. Peace out.